And good morning, and thank you for being here this morning. We are in the middle of some challenging times, and I wanted to share with you, first of all, I want to share with you a lot this morning, and so I'm going to be speaking quite quickly, so please grab your notes and pen, and if you would like to ask a question at the end or during, you will be able to, or you can follow up later with an email and I'll answer questions then. But first of all, I wanted to share why I wanted to do this. Now, obviously there's, this mass wanting to be generous with our expertise and to help people in that givers gain sense. And that's definitely increased in me, and I know it has in a lot of people in the world right now as we reach out to those who are suffering. But there's also a part of me that, as a naturopath and a healer, and in this, what we often call the woo-woo space, that I have held back on my opinions and my views, and some of that's justified in that it's not really what the rest of the world thinks, and so you can get shut down. But the message that I've been getting in the last week or so is to open up and share, to be authentic and honest, to be brave and courageous. And I have to say I was really quite nervous coming in, not because of the information that I've got, which is really just going to come out of my head, but there's this excruciating vulnerability in exposing my opinions. And I know a lot of people share them, but it still feels risky. So given all of that, my mission, my passion, my purpose in being alive and on this planet is to empower women. And I've got clear on that recently, that it's actually empowering women to be healers. I think it's our natural thing, our natural, not birthright, it's in our being, it's natural. It's, for me, it relates to being the sovereign of your kitchen, where we provide food to the family, and that food can be medicinal, it can be healthy, it can be healing. Then the majority of natural therapists are women. The herbal underground is women. And a lot of the healing is done by women. And not to say that men aren't involved in it as well. But it's this feminine essence. And I believe that this challenge that's going on in the world is an opportunity for the goddess to come in, feminine essence to come in, for us to find balance and harmony. So I just wanted to open with that so you know where I come from. So what we're going to be talking about this morning, and I have about 30 minutes max because we cut out. I want to talk to you a little bit about the current space that our world is in as far as paradigms, and why that's super important for us to know. And why then we aren't getting, marketing messages coming through on our phones and Facebooks and emails and televisions about how to improve our well-being, how to protect ourselves. Why is that? Why are the marketing messages different? Then I'm not going to talk about the virus and what you can do. There's so much of that already around in terms of hygiene and the nature of the virus and statistics and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to be touching that, but I'm going to be going through 4 or 5 key areas of things that are available in the natural medicine space that you can go and research yourself, that you can look into yourself, that you can find out more about, inform yourself about. So first of all, a little bit of background. So 100 years ago or so, a guy named Louis Pasteur existed, and you would have heard about him, I imagine. He is also the father of germ theory. Pasteurization is based on his name. He invented anthrax vaccines and so on. And so he was the one who put forward, and there were probably multiple scientists at the time doing all of this, but at least he's credited for this. He put forward the germ theory fairly early on in his life, But at the same time, there was this war waging with other scientific minds, like this fellow called Beauchamp. And I can't remember his first name, but if you research this, you'll find this information as well. And Beauchamp and his like-minded colleagues believed that the germ theory, that germs weren't the cause of disease. He believed that it's what he called the terrain. The terrain is the cause of the disease, and our bodies are the terrain. So there was this scientific war of minds at this time, of philosophies, germ theory where the germ is more important, or germ theory or disease theory where terrain was more important. And as you can tell, germ theory won. But Pasteur's notes, which weren't published till a long time after his death, indicated that what he actually came to, the conclusion he actually came to in his lifetime, was that it is actually the terrain or the soil. The terrain, not the germ, the soil, not the seed. I mean, they come together, obviously, but it's the state of the human being, their acidity, their immunity, their frequency. These things impact whether we become diseased or not. And it makes sense if you think about it. There's this disease going around, these viruses going around. If it was the germ, everyone would get it. Everyone would be struck down. Everyone would be vulnerable. But there's only some members of the population. The other thing that is missing in this this conversation really is the understanding of how our bodies are made up. If you think about it, what is the body made up of? Yes, it's water. Yes, it's bones and muscles. But if you go down to a cellular level, we're made up of protein, we're made up of fats, made up of minerals, we've got vitamins, and we have carbohydrates, which is largely the fuel for all of the functions in the body. Carbohydrates, fats, break down into fuel for the body. That's a very simplified way of looking at it. But where do we get these nutrients so that our bodies function and they come into being even? We have to get that through our food. And so what's missing is this understanding that nutrition is the foundation of immunity. And that's simply because through the generations, through the time in the last 100 years or so, the medical profession have moved towards remedies, medicines, drugs, theories that are outside of the body, largely, that don't really include the nature of the body and its vulnerabilities as far as nutrition and the mind and our frequencies and these things. Not to say that what they're doing is wrong, not to say that it isn't accurate what they're saying. There's just this small piece of the puzzle, which in my mind brings around this perspective that enables us to not be afraid. When you realize that you have control over what you put into your mouth, if you have control over your stress, you have control, you can up your frequency. The essential oil people in the audience know that essential oils raise the person's frequency. Homeopathy changes the person's frequency. Your phone changes your frequency. All the energy type medicines like acupuncture and Reiki and all these fundamental medicines, even yoga, that are based on frequencies and vibrations and energy. We understand this concept. It's just not mainstream. So that's why out there in the world right now, you are not getting these messages. You are not finding out what you can do in your kitchen to help yourself. I mean, if we did, I have to say, all the garlic in all the country would be gone. It would be bought. All the oranges would be cleared out of all the warehouses. There would be a rampage on those kinds of things instead of masks. And once you see this, you can see where people are going. They're trying to protect themselves from something outside of themselves and not really considering, as well as, that's also important, as well as what they can do for internal protection, if you like. So our culture, and this is where us women are invaluable, but our culture promotes dependence. It makes us dependent on the system. It makes us dependent on things outside of ourselves. Whereas what I want to share with you is information that you can take on, where you can take charge, where you're interdependent, not independent. We want to be part of the system. We just want to be self-sufficient as well as part of the whole. This is why our culture, the herbalists and the natural therapists, and let's call it, I do call it us woo-woo types. I hate that term, but we're alternative. We're kindly considered complementary at best. But this area of the world is diminished in its value because it is a little bit conflicting with the main message. Plus, I have to say, it is far less economy driven. It's far less profitable to be in this space. So that gives you just some senses to look outside at the messages that are going on in the world, at the fear that's arising, with a little bit of a different perspective. Now, there is a chat box at the bottom if you want to ask me questions or make comments or enable me to... I'm sorry, I've just realised that I have to approve everyone to come in. I'm not sure why Zoom's doing that, so apologies, Susie, I've just let you in. Okay, I'm getting all passionate. That's why you can tell my hands are all moving a lot. But I hope you're listening. I hope you're paying attention. I hope you're learning something, because we're going to go into now the various areas that you can find solutions for yourself, for your family, for your parents, for the teachers, for the people who are afraid in your world at the moment. Because we know fear lowers your frequency, fear makes you more vulnerable, fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we want to address that as much as possible. All right, so the first thing, number one, is food. Because as I mentioned earlier, that nutrition is the foundation of immunity, at least physical immunity. There are aspects of our mind and spirit, our emotions, that also impacts immunity. Our emotions impact immunity, which our counsellors and therapists would understand and be able to explain. But right now, just from the food aspect, this is essential for improving our immunity. And I'm not going to go into the immune process in the body and how immunoglobulins work, how antigens interact with the various types of immunity and produces an immune response and all that. It's absolutely massively complicated. But I am going to give you the perspective on the health side and the key nutrients that are important. Now, my favourites, and if you've listened to anything I've said before, you'll know this already, my favourites are the fat-soluble nutrients. So we're talking about vitamin A, vitamin D, and then to a lesser extent, E and K. A, D, E, and K. Now, to get these in food, they're mainly found in animal foods. And so if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you'll have trouble with vitamin A and vitamin D. And if you have immune issues and you are vegan or vegetarian, then that's a whole other conversation, a whole other thing that needs to be addressed. But for right now, I'm going to give you the traditional wisdom on these nutritional facts, because I've studied wise traditions in nutrition, and I'm bringing you the wisdom from that. So A and D act as, have their own actions on the immune system. D, for example, regulates immunity. It brings it up if it's low and it brings it down if it's high. So that's why if you have autoimmunity, vitamin D is often beneficial, and that can come in the form of sunshine. It can come in the form of supplement, which is less helpful, or it can come in the form of foods that contain vitamin A and D. And that is, for the animal food eaters, that's your liver, meat to a lesser extent, cod liver oil, butter, ghee, these kinds of things. And then for those who don't eat those things, then you have to get them in other forms. So, and that can be harder. So the A and D, the fat-soluble nutrients and fats generally, help us absorb nutrients from the rest of the body. So they have multiple roles. So we have been indoctrinated in the last 50 years towards carbohydrate-rich diet. We've been told to eat less protein, meat's bad, and so on. We've been told to eat less fat because fat's bad. And so we've tended to think that a carbohydrate-rich diet, whether that's vegetables and fruit or gluten-free grains or all that kind of stuff, lentils, all those things are carbohydrate-rich. Nothing wrong with any of those things, but a carbohydrate-rich diet will often lead to a tendency to have too many sugars in the diet, natural or synthesized, what I'm thinking about, processed. And we know that processed sugars undermine the immune system. So it's what you eat and what you don't eat. So tending back to eating more protein and eating more fats. This is generalized information, so it depends on where you're starting from. But certainly in my experience of working with clients here in the clinic, eating more fats is just about everybody needs to do that. And that's your butter and ghee and coconut oil and avocados and nuts and seeds and some of the beautiful cheap fatty meat cuts that you can use in the slow cooker, chicken with the skin, not without the skin, and so on. Other foods that we already know about for immunity are your herbs, culinary herbs. One hint I'll give you is to get thyme or oregano from your garden, snip off a length of it and put it in a cup of tea and sip that. That's amazing. Garlic and onions, if you could tolerate those, they are also very beneficial for immunity. Then there's what you don't eat. So consider that you can balance your diet to minimize the things that reduce your immunity and to maximize the things that improve your immunity. Things typically, and I'm going to say 2 things, primarily reduce immunity. One is sugar, processed sugar. Fruit sugar is fine. The sugars that lentils and chickpeas break down to, they're fine. Vegetable breaks down to sugars, they're all fine. It's processed sugars. It's the high fructose corn syrup. It's table sugar. It's all the sweeteners. A little bit of honey, a little bit of maple syrup. These things are okay. The other key thing that reduces immunity is vegetable oils. So your canola oil, sunflower seed oil, all the seed oils. You Google it, you'll see immunosuppressive action of vegetable oils. So anyone with immune conditions, chronic immune conditions such as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, any of the autoimmune conditions, you really want to review how much vegetable oil, highly processed vegetable oil, seed oils, hydrogenated oils you're consuming and minimize those. All right. Just welcome back. I know internet's a bit tricky for some of you, so welcome back. The other thing I'll mention that's very basic but often forgotten is water. So water keeps our mucous membranes plump and mucousy. And if you can imagine, like a dry mud bed that's cracked and caked mud, and it gets cracks in it because there's no rain. If you see that image and you think about your mucous membranes down in your lungs, in your throat, in your mouth, if they get dehydrated, you're more likely for a virus or a bacterial infection to enter into your body than if they're plump, because then there's all these immune chemicals in our mucous membranes to protect us. But if they dry out, then you're more susceptible and you're more vulnerable. So drinking your 2.5 or more litres a day of pure water, absolutely essential. You can have your coffee and you can have your tea and you can have your kombuchas and all those kinds of things, but make sure that you're getting your water. And then we have herbs. I absolutely love herbs. and there's a myriad of herbs in various forms that regulate immunity, that support immunity, that bring it down if it's overactive. There's culinary herbs, there's medicinal herbs, there's herbs as well. Culinary herbs is herbs as food. There's so many things. Herbal teas, exactly. Herbal teas. And depending on the herb, depends on how you will consume it. So one of the easy ways is to take herbal teas, fresh herb from the garden, like the infusion that I was just mentioning with thyme, a sprig of thyme or a sprig of oregano. You can use lemon juice in water is food, I suppose, not a herb, but that's beneficial. Lemon rind can be used medicinally. Often we'll have lavender in our gardens and we can use that. The essential oils are a form of herb, if you like, many of them, and can be used in absolutely concentrated form in that way. And then when you see a herbalist or a naturopath, then you're getting into tableted, liquid herbs, topical herbs in the form of creams or poultices or teas. Help me out here, Deanne. What other forms of herbs do we promote? If you've got something going on in your chest, you can have something directly as a poultice on your chest. And Deanne, do you want to add something?
I think you've covered all of the ways that we can have herbs, and herbal teas definitely is a good way. And like you said, if you can get it straight from your garden, that's fabulous. And then I think, and Nelson sort of had the question, how many herbal teas can you have? Well, you can really have as many as you like in a day, providing it's not going to give you diarrhea or any sort of a histamine reaction. So yeah, and then you've just got there, dried herbal teas. Yes, they're definitely okay. Try to get the organic ones is what I try to do. I have a lot of the herbal teas, and I say to my patients, Brenda, I don't know if you do the same, that their herbal tea water intake can be included in their general water intake, but not general tea or coffee.
Correct.
So yeah, if you're going to have your herbal teas, you can include it in your intake. And yeah, dried herbal teas are okay, definitely, and they're great for building the immunity. And now that we're going into cooler weather, I just love my herbal teas. But even in the hotter weather, I brew them and let them sit for a while in a really small amount of hot water, and then I put ice and cold water in it.
Yes. Yep. Herbal iced teas are amazing as well. Well, Deanne, you might be able to add in the chat a few extra ideas, but I'm just going to go through a couple of more well-known herbs that are used quite specifically for immunity. Because our immune system is impacted by other things, it can be impacted by our digestive system, for example, our stress, our environment, various other things. So herbs might be used to address those other systems that are impacting on immunity as well. So that can be down to good prescribing, good blends. But I'm just going to mention a couple here that are quite specific for immunity. And echinacea is an obvious one. Echinacea we've heard about now for a couple of decades. There's a lot of it available in the health food store, and it is a beautiful immune modulating herb and a great one for children as well. So some of these things, as a woman healer, and I'm empowering you I'm absolutely empowering you as a woman healer, that you want to have some of these things ready to go in the medicine cabinet, not just if you get, the one that we're talking about at the moment, but for winter, for a summer flu, for a summer cold. These things are, great to have in your first aid cabinet ready to go. Elderberry. There's a famous tea for when you get sick called YEP tea, Y-E-P, and it stands for yarrow, elderberry, and peppermint. Even just peppermint tea is going to be helpful. But elderberry is a wonderful respiratory herb and can help with getting over colds and flus. Astragalus is one of our Chinese herbs, and there's a lot of herbs that come from the Ayurvedic medicine system, the Chinese medicine system, and then us herbs, and I think, Diane, you'd be part of this. We were trained in more of the Western herbal medicine system because the British, the Europeans, the Native Americans all had herbs in their herbal dispensary, because back then that's all there was. Years ago, that's all there was. Mushrooms are a big part of immune regulation. So there's a lot of drugs in the medical system that are based on mushrooms. If you think about our penicillin, it's based on mold, and mold and bacteria compete. So that's why mushrooms can be so helpful. Then you may have heard of reishi mushrooms and others. Some of them you can add into your diet. Some of them you can have medicinally. And then one of my favorites are the ginseng. Ginseng is, great for energy and fatigue and stress. But Panax ginseng, my favorite Siberian ginseng, also has this benefit of supporting the immune system as well. So often those things go together: fatigue, lower immunity, nutrient deficiencies, just not taking care of ourselves properly, and so on. All right, we've only got a few more minutes left on our webinar, so I want to address a couple more things. And the next biggest immune killer is stress. And stress is an epidemic. And for many of us, we're not dealing with it as well as we know we could. And there are things that we can do. So first thing that we need to think about is that stress can raise the acidity in your body. That means your tissues are more acidic, and an acidic environment in the body is more prone to infection. So things to do for acidity: first of all, to eat more alkaline foods. Green leafy vegetables full of magnesium are, like I'm taking my magnesium powder at the moment. There's herbs rich in magnesium, there's foods rich in magnesium, the green leafy ones particularly, but others as well. Making sure that you breathe. So anxiety tends to be associated with shallow breathing, and that raises the acidity of the blood because the carbon dioxide increases. It's all biochemical. You can look that up. Nothing woo-woo about breathing if you look at the biochemistry of the body. So breathing helps reduce anxiety, helps lower acidity, helps you manage your stress, and that can come through exercise or breathing techniques. Being in nature has so many multiple benefits, and so many of us are stuck indoors. We forget to go outside. We don't have time, and maybe with this, what's going on in the world right now, one of the strategies to prioritize is to get you and your family outside, even if it's riding your bike, pottering in the garden, going for a walk, going out into the bush, going camping. Just see if you can unplug and go outside and play with your puppy, play with your, watch your fish, go and watch ants. It doesn't really matter, that interacting with nature, because nature doesn't know there's a pandemic. Nature hasn't changed since last week. Nature is still doing what nature does, and that impacts us, and we kind of calm down when we realize this too shall pass. Stay calm. Worrying and freaking out is optional. Being dramatic is optional. Nature persists. It keeps going. So highly medicinal to go out and spend a bit of time with nature. Other things that you can do: Bach flowers. Now, some of you may have heard of Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy is a great thing for your kids or yourself when you're feeling a little bit like you can't control your anxiety. I'll often, and Deanne, you might do this as well, I'll often put Bach flowers in my herbal mixes, and there's some specific ones that are for fear and anxiety. You can go to the health food store and find bush and Bach flower essences, or you can see someone who can prescribe them specifically for you. There's also homeopathics. Now, I am personally trained as a homeopath, but I don't practice as a classical homeopath who just does homeopathy. I refer to people who do that because it's an extraordinary system of medicine. And in fact, I have my own homeopath. It's one of the things that I do. But I will use easier to prescribe type of homeopathics in my clinic often. Anyone who's just done my Detox and Nourish program, I used a homeopathic detox kit. So these things are available. You will find some in the health food store as well, some homeopathics. The other thing that I can't stop and leave without mentioning is, of course, the health professionals out there who are out there really needing us to support them at this time, to book in, who do virtual consultations, and that's our counsellors, our psychotherapists, our non-hands-on healers. There's some healers that do distance healing, and they are amazing. Now, have I missed anything? Would you like to type into the chat any other ideas that you have, guys, that you'd like to share that I can mention as we gently come to a close here? And as you're doing that, I'm going to just summarize what I'm talking about, soaking it all in. I get it. I'm excited. I am so excited by this pandemic. I know I don't know how I'm going to survive it financially. My business is relatively new. I've spent most of my career in corporate training and corporate health, and recently started my business doing what I'm doing, and it's not substantial enough to survive this pandemic. And I really get it, a lot of you, but I am so excited. There are new opportunities in here for us ladies. There is a turning towards the feminine. I totally believe it. I think there's change afoot, and yes, we grieve what we had, and that's what the suffering and the anxiety is about, but shift your focus forward. Shift your focus to spotting. Have your radar for opportunities. How can you help? Now, I have been a corporate naturopath for almost 30 years, and I've got all these healer-feeler types around me who don't have any idea how to run a webinar. And I'm saying, I'll help you. I'll help you. And maybe my business will go down that way. I don't know. But be open to opportunities because they're there. And us ladies, we're up for it. I believe that we have way more potential than we've ever been led to believe, that the spiritual aspect of being a woman has not even been, the surface hasn't even been scratched, that the power of the menopausal woman, the postmenopausal woman, the woman in her 50s is freaking amazing. And that's the fire time of your life. It's the fire element. It's the fiery, hot, flushy time. And these women are absolutely extraordinary, and many of them don't even realize it and get, so unhappy because they think they don't understand. So summary. Pasteur was wrong. It's the soil, not the seed. It's the terrain, not the germ. So let's do what we can to support our own immune systems and share that with others. And then all the food, water, herbs, stress management, first aid, and other ideas that you can come up with. And I'm about to lose contact here with all you, so I want to thank you for being part of this. It is recorded. I will post it online, and I thank you so much for being a part of my world and allowing me to contribute. I'm going to stay on and just read comments. So I'll stop recording